Shabbat Shalom. This morning I want to begin by talking about the play-by-play of the beginning of our Parsha for the week, Vayetze. It begins with Yaakov, with Jacob leaving Beersheba for Haran. And he stops at a place for the night, and he uses a stone for a pillow. And then he dreams that he saw a ladder to heaven on which God's angels ascended and descended. God stood beside him and promised to give him and his numerous descendants the land on which he lay, said that through his descendants all the earth would be blessed, and promised to stay with him wherever he went and bring him back to the land. Jacob wakes up, he's very afraid, and says that surely the place that he was in is the house of God, the gate of heaven. He names the location Beit El, house of God. Jacob then takes the stone from under his head, sets it up as a pillar, pours oil on top of it. This is a way that you sanctified a site. After this, he vows that if God would stay with him, give him bread and clothing, return him to his father's house in peace, then God would be his God, the stone pillar would be God's house, and he would give God a tenth of what he received. All right, so that is a lot to unpack. And although most of us are probably familiar with this story, angels on a ladder going up and down, that might be a strange concept if you were to describe it to the layman. After hearing this story, I have two questions. Number one, what about Jacob is so great that he is deserving of an ecstatic vision? Let's just see where we're at so far. Number one, he's so far swindled his father and his brother. He plays favorites with his wives. Overall is kind of a lousy family man. And number two, my second question about this is the things promised in Jacob's dream, do they come true? Before I answer these questions, I want to explore the ideas of visions a bit more. And I'll warn you, I've been on a little bit of a history kick. According to court records, this is well documented, in the year 1425, so 600 years ago, at the age of 13, a young French girl claimed to have visions too. This is very well documented in court cases. In this specific court case, she said that when she was in her father's garden, she was visited by Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. And they told her to drive out the English and take the Dauphin to Reims to be crowned the next king of France. She's only 13. And when pressed further about the saints that visited her, this young French girl, who we all know as Joan of Arc, she described them in vivid detail and said that she cried when they left her as they were so beautiful. Now, I could ask the same question of Joan that I asked of Jacob. Why was she so special that she received these ecstatic visions? And two, did the promises in her vision come true? All right, well, historians have been trying to answer the first question for a long time. Not much is known about Joan, other than the fact that she was a poor peasant girl who claimed to have these wacky visions. But as for the second question, she did finally meet with the Dauphin, and because of this 13-year-old kid, he is eventually crowned King of France. So I guess her vision did come true in a way. However, the king and the Catholic Church eventually turn on Joan. She's publicly burned at the stake at only aged 19. Of course, years later, the church changes its mind, and wouldn't you know it, Joan of Arc is now a saint again. Mazel tov to her. Now, Was Joan literally visited by saints? This rabbi has his doubts, but I can't deny that whatever she experienced, she believed enough to lead her on a course that changed the whole face of Europe and arguably the whole world. What's with all of these people receiving visions or seeing signs? By the way, in my line of work, people tell you they see all sorts of stuff. The stories get very silly. People claim to see God or the Pope or various signs in wall patterns or even on burnt pieces of toast. You might think this is just a silly Christian superstition, but the Jews are guilty of vision seeking as well. In fact, the whole mystical Jewish movement was born out of the quest for some of the sages to obtain seeing God, just like the prophet Yehezkel, Ezekiel, described. In the Zoharic tradition, they began playing around with the letters of God's name, and they would oftentimes use them in a mantra, repeating them over and over and over, thousands of times. The Kabbalists even make a fictional map of God's body, known as the Sfirot, noting various attributes of God, claiming that knowing these details could lead to one divine interaction. It turns out that people in almost every place and in every religion have done vision quests of their own. Native American tribes are well known to attempt to see a vision, while the specific techniques for attaining a vision vary from tribe to tribe. Many of the methods these young braves would employ follow a similar pattern. In some tribes, nearly all the young people traditionally engage in some sort of formal vision quest, as participation in the experience was one of the rituals marking an individual's transformation from childhood to adulthood, similar to like a bar or bat mitzvah. Usually, an individual's first vision quest is preceded by a period of preparation with a religious specialist. Think of a shaman. The quest itself involves going to an isolated location and engaging in prayer while foregoing food and drink for a period of up to several days. And yes, some cultures encourage fasting and prayer with various hallucinogens or alcohol. That'll give you a great vision. And upon receiving the sign or vision, the participant usually returns home and seeks help in interpreting their experience. Not all vision quests are successful, and these religious specialists generally advise individuals to abandon a given attempt if a vision was not received with a prescribed period of time. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, Rabbi, what about all the wacky people that claim to have visions or signs from God and they turn out to be totally fake? Well, this certainly happens. Jim Jones from the Jonestown tragedy. He claimed to receive numerous visions from God and then encouraged his followers to take their own lives. Marshall Applewhite founded the Heaven's Gate cult group, was convinced that God told him to initiate a mass suicide to follow the Hale-Bopp comet. David Koresh, our friends from Waco, the Branch Davidians, likewise asserted he had visions from God. What makes these people different from the patriarch Jacob, who also claimed to have had a vision from God? Well, I suppose that depends on how you look at things. But let me be the first to say, if you think you've had a vision from God and God tells you to hurt or kill someone, you are quite mistaken. When I was in Las Vegas, someone came to my office in the morning and said, I had a vision and God told me that you were going to give me $1,000 and a plane ticket to Los Angeles. And I said, I talked to God this morning and he didn't mention that. Earlier, I asked if the promises in Jacob's dream came true, that one day his descendants would occupy the land where he slept. Well, if I was giving this sermon just 100 years ago, I wouldn't be able to claim that they did because we didn't have a Jewish state. So notice that promises and dreams and visions tend to be fleeting as well. With regard to seeing visions, I can only say the following. It's kind of like being in love. You'll know it when it's there. The most common question I get from the kids here at Agudas Achim deals with God. They want to know how God looks and how God talks to us. And for many of our kids here, they want to interact with God the way Jacob did in his dream. They want God to appear and talk to them like a friend would and tell them exactly what to do. Wouldn't it be great if it happened like that all the time? Just like with Joan of Arc, if we needed assistance, God would suddenly appear and say to us, "Take the job in Pittsburgh." Wouldn't that be great? That would be great, but it would be taking the easy way out. Because God does not usually talk to us in the way we would like. In fact, for most of us, God is far too silent. But just because we don't have the conversation or interaction or even the vision that we want, that doesn't mean that God isn't there. There was a note scratched into the wall at Auschwitz by an unknown author, and it is usually translated as the following, quote, "I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when God is silent." So today, if you haven't received a vision from a Catholic saint, that's good. If you have, I really want to hear about this after services. But in all seriousness, if you feel like God hasn't given you the sign you've been waiting for, or if you feel like the universe has been too silently lately, I want to encourage you to embrace the uneasiness and continue to wait. And when it does come, my prayer for you is to know that it's right. Shabbat Shalom.